All righty. Well, we're going to have Z on the rest of the episode. So, what
Yes, sis.
time is it? Ask
Ask
your
your
Aunties.
aunties. Hey, a little one shoulder shimmy. Let's see here. You want to do it, Jarrell?
Yes, I can do. And let me find out where this chat is. Oh, there it is. So it says, so I was catching up on some of the videos and I watched the Ask Your Aunties begging for a BJ. And one of the things mentioned early on is how before you commit to a relationship, you make sure you both are sexually compatible. But here's the thing. I have heard of many people that are in good relationships, me included, that their sexual drive and their partners are totally different. And if that's the case, that's something known before becoming a couple. So I guess the question is, how much sex affects the decision to become a couple? And yes, sex is 100% necessary. And if we just get comfortable with the person too much, that someone in the relationship has to sacrifice something. And just to clarify, yes, I know we need communication and all that. But why and how knowingly do we accept a relationship where we know sex stuff or desire levels, etc., is different? So in long story short, compatibility in a relationship, especially whether it's sexually, specifically sexually,
Yeah.
how important is it when you're getting in a relationship, even when you have good communication?
Yeah. We'll let Z kick that off.
Oh, really? Me?
You're the special guest.
I mean, didn't your partner just bring you something to drink?
I know he just bought you a drink, so you know.
Dude, that's foreplay right there.
Those the post credits, okay?
Let me cater to you.
I know that's right. Anything you want, baby. Ooh, you blow me away. Come on, B. Right.
Hey, I've been in my share of relationships where I used to think that focusing on sex and making sex an important part of a relationship was something that was really shallow. So I had been in my share of relationships where I overlooked the sexual incompatibility. And then at the end of the day, it of course that ended up being something that came back, right? And that it wasn't necessarily something that was fair for the other person that was involved, and all of that kind of stuff. So, but you be an adult and you make those decisions, and sometimes you have to, end those relationships with folks that you really truly love, but you're just the compatibility from a sexual perspective isn't there. You got to move on from that perspective. But I don't necessarily think that that it's an end all be all, right? Because love changes people's minds and hearts and things that people want to be engaged in and involved in, and sometimes people didn't have exposure to certain things as opposed to other things, and they didn't necessarily know that they would like certain things when they ultimately end up liking it. So that, I mean, it's I think it's a moving target in regards to that. And so, I know some gay married couples where they got married, they're both tops.
Yeah.
It's working out somehow. Right?
Who? Let me stop.
It's working out. It's working out somehow. So that's my 2 cents. But I'd love to hear what the three of you have to say.
Yeah. I agree. It is definitely a moving target. And I think sometimes even say you're in a relationship for a while, there's ebbs and flows, highs and lows, weeks and days and months that is like, oh, damn, we jackrabbits. And then other times you like life gets in the way sometimes. And and I think over time too, as age fluctuates, because especially in my relationship, there's an age difference. And so as he's getting older, it might not be quite as important as it once was. And for me, I'm like, okay, come on now, boo. But it's not the only thing in our relationship, and it's not the only thing that we're trying to grow and succeed in. So I think if you're in a relationship that you care about them, there's just more than just sex. It's important. It's definitely important. And I think it's one thing is that sometimes you don't know getting into a long-term relationship that there's going to be some of these ebbs and flows and spells potentially. But as you said, communication is key. If you're feeling like you're not getting your needs, speak up, and we got to figure something out. And I think there's options. Like I think again, sometimes we just get so focused on monogamy and things like that. And if it works for you, it works for you. But there's options to be like, hey, maybe we were monogamous, but hey, my needs have changed, your needs have changed, whatever it may be. Let's have that conversation and see what can potentially be done instead of having to build up a resentment and things like that. We're just not getting that need met sexually. But yeah, I mean, going into it, if you already know that you're not as compatible and that's not an end all be all, or that's like maybe a deal breaker for you, don't bring that shit up a decade later.
Right. What about the sexual?
Go.
But what about the sexual drive? Because I think that's one of the things that this person is hitting on when they say in a good relationship that their sexual drive and their partners are totally different, though. You know, I don't think it's never about what you're into. I think it's about more. When I hear sexual drive, I think frequency.
Yeah. And
You
like
know, I
libido
think
and things
how,
like that.
yeah, like how often, you know, I do definitely think that plays a big role in it. You know, some people need it on a regular basis, you know, and that is okay, you know, but there are also some who like, you know, I'm good for a couple weeks, you know, or I don't need it that often. And I do think that type of difference can make or break a relationship, you know, because it's at the end of the day, if you have the higher sex drive that and your partner doesn't, that means you're not getting something out of your relationship, which can make straying out of your relationship that much more easier to do, you know. But I think that's at the end of the day, that's not a well, my partner's not doing thing. That's a you thing. Like if you know that your sexual drive is more than your partner's, then you have to be like, hey, I need this. And if you can't give me this, then I can't do this. Because it's not their fault that you end up like cheating in that situation. Because, you know, some people be like, well, I cheated because I wasn't getting this. Well,
you could be grown.
Right. Maybe you asking for too much. Bitch, maybe you asking for too much. You know, maybe you a hoe and you need to sit the fuck down. You know, like, you know, you
down on something.
You know, you're right. They sit down on something. But, you know, like, I think that is very, like, that. I think in this question, that's kind of the root of it. But at the same time, I completely agree with you all. Like, but when it comes to sexual compatibility, and I feel like that's the stuff that you're into, you know, the things that arouse both you and your partner, you know, in those moments, that's also very important too, you know. So I honestly feel like both of those have to be present, and both of those have to be something that's communicated. And I've said on the podcast before, like Fizz and I, like, we didn't have sex the first 4 months of our relationship because that's not what we wanted our relationship to be based on. We wanted to be more than just a physical connection, because in those hard moments, the physical connection ain't saving us. You know, you know, it's all the other things that we invested in our relationship that's going to get us to that longevity, that long-term relationship that we both envision. And then we start having those conversations, and it kind of lucked out. But I will say though, I still feel like it was something that we probably could have talked about more, you know, in those times, you know, in those first 4 months. But we're in a place now where like we are on the same page, and it works great for the two of us.
Yeah,
you know. But it may not be the case for everybody. So at the end of the day, just like you have those conversations about like what movies you like and what music you like and stuff like that, talk about how much you like your back blown out and how much you like sucking dick, you know, or if you don't like sucking dick, you know, if you need your hole punched or something, like you talk about that like right away. Don't mean you need to do it. I'm not saying you need to go out there and do all these things,
but let it be known. Let it be normal. It should be a normal ass conversation.
Right. set the table. Know what the full 7-course
Normalize the
meal
discussion.
is. You know, I'm just saying.
I do feel like the thing that we're not talking about is kind of the latter part of the question, because I agree with what you all are saying. But the latter part of the question is, why do people get into these relationships knowing that the levels are different? And so I think what we're not talking about is that it's a very real thing that a lot of people, not just gay men, shrink.
Because
She's doing too much. She's
Right,
doing
you
too
see
much.
this on YouTube.
Doing too
that
much.
was a YouTube moment. 'Cause in my mind, I was answering the
Girl.
questions. I was in real time. I was like,
I'm getting into my Iyanla mode, and she over here.
She just get lay it on me.
She didn't got a grand championship, and now she just cutting everything up. But I think in all truthfulness, in a real moment of honesty and having a real conversation, right? And it's not to say that those other things aren't valid and aren't equally important, but on the emotional side of it, I believe that a lot of us end up shrinking ourselves. We shrink ourselves for the sake of the relationship. And oftentimes it's because what we want, we value more than what we need. So we want the relationship. We want to be with that guy. We want to be with that girl more so than we're valuing what we need out of the relationship. So it becomes, so we end up shrinking those parts of ourselves. So then you do have people who, I love this person so much, I want to be with them so much that I end up not emphasizing the things that could potentially break us up. Right. And that ends up resulting in other problems that happen in the relationship, like people stepping out, whether emotionally or physically, and all these things. So the notion, right, of why people or how people knowingly go into these relationships, knowing that there is a difference, is because they want to. They want to more. And I'm not being shady, but they want to. More so than they're recognizing their own needs and what they value. Sometimes in that, because we've all been there. I know I've been in that situation more times than I care to admit. Sometimes we just don't know what we need. And that relationship helps uncover things like, I didn't realize that our sexual incompatibility was going to be an issue for me.
Right.
I didn't realize that my sexual appetite is growing or decreasing than when we first got together. You know, so like who you are in the midst of the relationship can be a vastly different person than who you were when you were courting this individual, contemplating going into a relationship with them. So I think honestly, this notion of how much of ourselves are we sacrificing because we want more than we're willing to pursue what we need. That is a real conversation. I think is it blurs all of the lines of sexual expression and identity. That's a human basic need with every relationship.
So then how do you know what you need without going for what you want?
You have to, well, that's what you have to do. You have to experiment. You have to experiment. You have to, but I think the notion of it, I think when you're figuring out who you are, you know, going back to, you know, Z and the book, right? And talking about how a lot of us don't have the gay history, that I'm using gay very broadly, the LGBTQIA history, the cultural history of our peoples, right? And like many of us who have come of age in their queerness, collectively, you know, as a term, come of age in terms of who they are much later in life, right? There is so much of our lives that are hidden, uncovered, that we're ashamed of, that we don't explore, that we don't navigate until we're in the midst of a relationship, until we're in the midst of whatever situation it is that we're in, that you figure it out at the expense of, you know, potentially these relationships. Also, you got to experiment, because there are going to be things that, how do you know that you don't, that you're a sex positive person, or that you're much more conservative, until you start pushing the boundaries for yourself and exploring that and figuring out, I don't really like this, or I kind of like this, or I didn't know that I would like that.
Exactly.
You don't know until you don't know. But I think at the end of the day, it boils down to the communication. And I think if there is healthy communication between, and I know this, this writer said, that I know there's communication, but I think it's about talking about the right kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's not just
and being open to that communication,
because I think sometimes the fear is that you either might hurt your partner's feelings when you bring this up, or get your feelings hurt when they bring it up. And that's a part that, like, especially if someone that you care for, that you are building a life with and things like that, you almost still, no matter how long or short you're in a relationship, got to somehow put these separately, the emotion of it, and just a matter of fact is that they felt comfortable to come to you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't want them stepping out. We want you want your partner, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, to come to you with these situations and figuring out a game plan. And that's it.
Absolutely. There's two things that came to mind. One thing was piggybacking in regards to what Jarrell said in regards to his relationship. He was saying that, there probably could have been better communication early on in regard to the sexual compatibility, frequency aspect and everything, right? And that reminds me that, sex ed is not something that happens here in the United States. So there's never a discussion in regards to normalizing it. It's always this weird, awkward thing where parents don't do it. You don't talk about it at school. Whereas in other countries, right, like in Europe, like everybody learns about sex ed. It's not a big deal. And so it's more normalized in regards to being able to have these types of very open and honest discussions in the very beginning, when you're still courting each other, as opposed to years later after you've been in the relationship and then you find out, I really like this.
I like getting fisted.
I can't. I mean, but that's true, because for me, like with my parents, like if I ever heard like the Velvet Rope, that's when I knew. Like, I was like, oh, I heard that song. I'm gonna stay upstairs. We ain't going nowhere near them.
That was the song.
The album.
And that's a long ass album too.
What you doing with your hands that you can't pick up the phone?
He heard that first interlude that come on that album.
I still can't listen to that album without, like, it's just that album is just
it's a trailer.
Right.
That album's over there.
Because that Velvet Rope's at the beginning of that album too. So
I know. I knew. I just
It didn't take you long to figure that out.
Look, but that was our sex ed. Like like you kind of, you talk about it, but you don't talk about it. Like you just know, you pick up on some of those things.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I was fortunate enough that, like, my partner has the communication skills where we can talk about those things, and we can talk about, hey, his needs versus my needs, how we meet in the middle, and then also just the idea of just part of being a relationship is also just, doing for your partner, like sometimes it's not all about, you necessarily having to like the same thing sexually.
Right.
Sometimes it's just being comfortable to do for your partner what their needs are. Doesn't mean that you have to, feel some sort of way about it too, but that comfort level alone can go a long way to make sure that both parties are getting what they need out of it.
Period.
I think
this is one of the reasons we have this podcast. We can go from talking about bouncing on dicks to emotional intelligence.
Right?
Bam. Right.
But I do feel like the thing that's difficult for a lot of people when it comes to like communication is really getting in touch with their emotions. What is it that you're feeling? Why are you feeling it? And being able to articulate it in a way that the other person can receive it. Yeah. And, that's really difficult for some people to do. So it's, in my opinion, that's why I was stuck on like that last piece, like the how and the why people do it, because there is a level of maturity. And I'm not trying to say this to shade anybody. I'm just saying there is a level of maturity that you gain over time that allows you to advocate for what the fuck you want,
and
but
need.
also what you need. You know, there is a level of maturity that comes along with that. So like Jarrell, when you were saying, well, how do you know if you don't try? Well, yeah, you're going to have to try. You're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, which we have. You're going to have to fuck a lot of ducks,
a lot of
which
ugly
we have,
frogs.
you know,
There's a lot of
like,
ugly dangalangs out there.
But the hope, I think the hope, and what I hope for people as they get out of this, and this is something that I put into practice as well, is that every single encounter, every relationship that you have, whether it's sexual, friendship, professional, whatever, and that relationship, whether it's a relationship that you have today or it is a relationship that has ended or is ending, there's something that you're supposed to be learning from that.
Yes,
there is
absolutely.
something that you're supposed to be learning from that. So if it's if it's a romantic relationship, sexual relationship, and you find yourself always dating the same kind of person, right? There's something you're supposed to be learning out of that that you are not learning. So, you know, I would encourage people, all people, to think about, really be reflective about the relationships that you have, and really think about, well, what is it that I'm supposed to learn from it? How did I show up? How did I communicate? How should I have shown up? What did I do? What didn't I do? What could I have done differently? What do I need to do differently moving into the next phase of whatever is going to be before me? And quite frankly, training yourself to be comfortable, training yourself to know that if somebody says no to you, that means it's not right for you.
Right. And I hope people find courage literally in that statement of knowing that, like, just because it didn't work between you and the other person doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, you know, like
it's not yucking your yum.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just more so about finding what's right for you, and just knowing
and
that
for the people too saying no, that it's okay to say no as well.
That part, you know, like, I mean, like, at the end of the day, it really is about just finding out the best version of yourself. You know, and you really don't know what you don't know. So don't be mad or don't be scared of going into something because you don't know something. You know, like, part of growing and getting older is about learning. You know, there's a reason why, you know, when we get to certain people's ages, you know, we talk about, you know,
don't be looking over there.
I look at the flying
look over there.
She's so shady. I remember that. Look over there.
I looked at the flying plane over here, and, you know,
marry a wrinkle.
Okay, Jada. Jada Essence Hall.
No turkey necks over here.
But, you know, like, that's where they talk
no
about
waddle
wisdom.
arms. Come on now.
But that's where, you know, where they talk about wisdom, you know, like, that's, you know, that's how you get there. You know, that's how you feel comfortable in who you are, and you find yourself being more grounded by going through those life lessons. So, you know, explore, bitch, figure it out, and don't.
And if you're already in a relationship, though, bring it up. At least have the courage to bring it up, to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, so that way, if it don't work, you can get out and you can go experiment,
and
spread
have
like
some
butter.
Fun. And this question came from show don't.
I'll say that again. Closed mouths don't get fed.
More ways than one. And this question came from episode 133, which was rumors Lizzo versus Lindsay, Ashley Aunteas begging for a BJ. So that's where it came from, in Afghanistan and Haiti. So this was wow. That episode just seemed like yesterday. This is already damn near 10 episodes ago.
Yeah, girl.
Oh, really?
But yeah, so if you wanted to go back and listen to that initial Ashley Aunteas, where this question came from, it is episode 133, came out on August 23rd. So 2021, just in case you're hearing this in the future.
Right.
But continue.
I love questions like this. I really
that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I think that I feel like this person said we could say their name, so I want to give them credit. Miguel, thank you, Miguel. Right, thanks, boo. But continue to send your questions at aya@minorityareport.com or DM us. We like these questions. That's a very good one to follow up, especially it shows that you're listening to the episodes. Thanks, boo.
Well, of course, Miguel's part of the community.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
Absolutely.